Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Universalist Church of Columbus. I'm Reverend Dr. Marian Stewart. It's my pleasure to serve as senior minister. This morning as we gather, we look at a year like no other, a year of pandemic, a year that has tried us in so many ways, a year that holds us in community, that holds us as well. This morning, we live, work, and worship on land that was inhabited for thousands of years before white people came. The lands of the Adena, the Hopewell, the Miami, the Seneca, the Wyandotte, the Cayuga. So many peoples have been here before. We honor their legacy, but also our legacy of forcefully removing them to the west of the Mississippi in 1830. We hold this just as the land holds us as we move forward into this morning. Let us center ourselves as we listen to Nathan play our prelude.
Thank you, Nathan. Good morning. It is so wonderful to be with you this bright and beautiful Sunday morning. If you are visiting with us this morning, welcome. Please let us know that you are here by filling out the visitors form on our website. There's a link to that in the chat box. And to subscribe to our email newsletter and announcements, please fill out the connections form on our website or email me to be added. This is the best way to stay informed about all of the wonderful classes, workshops, and groups that we have currently meeting. This morning, we want to take a brief moment to lift up our Asian, Pacific Islander, and Hawaiian siblings and the hurt and pain they are experiencing and have been experiencing during this whole pandemic. I hope you will take a moment with me as we take a collective deep breath and express our horror and outrage at the discrimination and hateful treatment that they are experiencing, as well as our collective prayers and promise to continue fighting until there is justice and equality everywhere. As we lift up our siblings and mark our 1 year of doing church virtually, I invite you to experience and feel whatever may be rising up within you. Whether you have been a member for 50 years, are a new member who has never stepped foot in our building, or are visiting with us this morning, this service will help us all to hold one another together as a community of love and hope. I hope you'll join us in lifting up the joys and the sorrows of this past year. And now I'll invite Reverend Marian to lay our chalice.
Thank you, Kelly, and thank you so much for lifting up our Asian American Pacific Islander friends, neighbors. It's been a hard week. Thank you so much. This morning, I invite you, if you have your chalice or candle nearby, to bring it close so that we can light our chalice together. This morning, instead of chalice lighting words, so to speak, we're going to sing. But first, I want to say, as you're grabbing your candle and chalice and your match, that this is the day we've been given. This, today, in all of its harshness, complexities, and joy, not to mention sunshine. This is where we are, and for that, we are grateful. Let us sing, and then we will light our chalice.
Precious day, for all gathered here, and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. We give thanks for this precious day. For this precious day, for all gathered here, and those far away, for this time we share with love and care. We give thanks for this precious day.
Our chalice is lit. How lonely sits that city that was so full of people. These are the opening words to the book of Lamentations in the Hebrew scriptures. How lonely sits the city that was so full of people. We've been there and still are in so many ways. We are on the journey filled with trauma and hope. This morning, 1 year after the declaration of pandemic and life as we knew it shifted, we step back to look at the arc of our experience. Even as each of us responded in different ways, there's a commonality that will thread through this service. I hope you will find it healing and inspiring. We'll begin with a Time for All Ages story written by our own Amber Scott, followed by an examination of the early phases of the pandemic and those experiences. And then we will leap forward to renewal and reconstruction. In shorthand, you might say that we're going to travel from lamentation to hope.
Good morning. I'm Amber Scott, your Director of Religious Exploration. Our Sunday school class for 3 to 7 years, our youth group for 12 to 19 years, and our Navigators Scouting Juniors all meet online later today. Actually, I don't know. Okay, yeah, that's correct. Make sure that it's correct. Today's story is called The Stuffies and the Pandemic, with pictures by the Davidson family and Nikki Ducey. First UU is a place to laugh and learn and play together, a place to work for justice. Last year, when the world discovered a scary new sickness, we had to close our church because it was not safe to be together in person. We learned to wear masks, to wash our hands frequently, and to social distance. We spent a lot of time staying home. It was a strange spring and a stranger summer. Many of us found comfort in our family members, roommates, beloved pets, and our stuffed animals. Normally, the folks from First UU love to go camping and to Summer Institute, and we especially look forward to our Labor Day retreat at Camp Odioqua. And because everyone had to stay home all summer, that gave our stuffed animals a great idea. Stuffed animals don't get sick the same way that we do, so they agreed to have their own retreat at First UU to visit and talk about how to help the people that they love. A few brave humans even agreed to be their chaperones: Christine, Billy, and Nikki. When Teddy, Liam, Vincent, Barnaby, and Benjamin also volunteered to help, the Stuffies knew they would be set for the weekend. The Stuffies shared how they had helped their human friends during the pandemic. Many of the dolls and animals said that they had given us lots and lots of hugs, since people weren't allowed to hug anyone they didn't live with. Some talked about being held and letting us cry when we were frustrated or when we were sad because a friend passed away. There were days that they helped us remember to go outside. They reminded us to take deep breaths, to rest, and to get enough exercise. They watched the worship services on the computer with us and made sure we lit the chalice and helped us keep our home altars looking tidy. Next, our stuffed animals talked about what it would be like when people could come to the church in person again. Would we remember how to be at church together? They hoped that we would remember how to covenant together, how to make promises to treat each other well. Kids and youth going to Sunday school classes would get to see their teachers in person again. The church choirs and sacred song circle would be able to practice and sing together. And maybe once humans were vaccinated, they could throw a big party just as fancy and fantastic as the church auction. They especially hoped that there would be plenty of ketchup to go around for church breakfast. The Stuffies knew that being together again would be different than it was before. People would be happy to be at church together, but they would also be sad for the friends that we lost and still be afraid and careful because of the virus. They knew that even the church services and classes would be different, with more cameras and computers running inside and more kids and youth meeting outside. Yes, it will be different, but it will be okay because our First UU community will be together to laugh and learn and play and work for justice. And that makes all the difference. The end. Just as our beloved stuffed animals did, I invite you to imagine what it will be like when we can return to our church building in person again.
Thank you, Amber. What a great story. I really appreciate you sharing that, and that the Stuffies were able to share our church building and share our story together. You know, it's difficult to wrap our minds around what has happened over the past year. It's been a year like no other. A theoretical model of what we've experienced was developed by Zunin and Myers and has been cited in numerous works. The model outlines the phases of individual and emotional responses to the trauma, to the disaster of the pandemic, whether this disaster was man-made or natural. Many thanks to the Unitarian Universalist Trauma Ministry for lifting this model up to me, so that when I saw it, I just said, yes, that's it. Zunin and Myers captured so much of what we've been experiencing. I'll share it with you, the model with you, in just a moment. But first, I want to tell you that I've found it to be very useful for two levels of understanding, both the individual level and the collective, what we've experienced together. Diane Myers defines these levels, the individual and the collective, this way. Diane Myers is also, she teaches disaster response and recovery to mental health professionals. Here's how she defines individual trauma. It is a blow to the psyche that breaks through one's defenses so suddenly and with such brutal force that one cannot react to it effectively. She defines collective trauma as a blow to the basic tissues of social life that damages the bonds of attaching people together and impairs the prevailing sense of communality. That's really powerful, powerful definitions. And yes, I think she's right. As an individual, Zunin and Myers, their model of phases helped shed light on why I felt a certain way over the last months. The shock, the shutdown, the challenge to get the whole church online, hurry up, now. And the heroic rising to the occasion, getting it done to the highest of standards. The honeymoon phase of, yes, we're doing it. And then the sinking and slinking down into the weight of it all, the deaths, the isolation, the losses, disillusionment, depression, fatigue, enduring, even if not exactly thriving. I've also listened to the stories, to your stories about how deeply you've been impacted and affected by the pandemic. Some have felt it more personally than others, but you don't have to look too hard to feel, to see, to ache for the brutality of the pandemic's effects. We've all lost so much. We've been forced to change, to adapt. We've redefined, reshaped, and we've rediscovered the necessity of being in community. With all of this, somehow, we're making it through. Sometimes I wonder, what was it like before? Do you remember the initial shock, the impact of the virus, the rules, the shutdown? Here is the Zinn and Myers model that I promised, as presented by Mark DeWolf in the training manual for the Department of Health and Human Services. I'll also include this graph in this week's Rev Talk, so you don't have to study it too hard. Just get the idea of what it presents. Let's share the screen so you can see the graph. Here it is, the pre-disaster, we were going along just fine. We go down into impact. Oh my gosh, what happened to the heroic rising to the occasion, up to the honeymoon? Yes, we're doing this. And down, 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 down into disillusionment, which happened, of course, for us gradually over last winter, spring, summer, and this fall and into the holidays. Oh my goodness, it was hard. And now we're starting to go up into a phase of recovery thanks to vaccines and healthcare. But my friends, this is quite the curve we've been on. The model says that this lasts anywhere from 1 to 3 years. We've been through the first year of it. Now we've got to do the recovery. Yes, do the recovery. But I want to spend a moment on that disillusionment phase, that phase that we went down, 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 and just kind of barrel towards the bottom, if you will. You know, it took us down to the holidays and more deaths, more infections. The numbers kept rising and more restrictions. Sometimes I wondered, where is hope? How are we going to get out of this? We've lost so much, and so many of us have lost loved ones, friends, neighbors. As a church, we lost the Reverend Dr. Tony McDonald, who was indeed a minister of music. He was director of music here at this church for many years. But this pandemic with the restrictions kept us from grieving the loss of our loved ones. It even kept us from being together. It was surreal. It was hard. You know, we also learned how to be afraid of each other because our life, our health depended on it. None of us were unaffected. As a nation, we've lost over 500,000 people. Tens of thousands of children have lost their grandparents. Tens of millions have lost jobs. And everyone has seen changes. I go back to the opening lines of Lamentations. How lonely sits a city that was so full of people. I invite you to sit for a moment with all that grief, loss, this awareness surrounded and held in a community of love.
We are worn, we are tired, and we pray and hope to be strong. I'm Isabel Call, your Assistant Minister of Pastoral Care. As we remember the trauma of the past year, it is totally natural to be disillusioned. We've had to let go of the illusion that everything will be okay in the way we'd assumed. Life has changed. Let us recognize these changes, name them, spell them out, not just silently in our hearts, but outwardly together. In the next few days and weeks, we invite you to come to the church building, church grounds, and weave your losses into our shared history. There is a healing heart hung in the great climbing tree by the main entrance. See a picture of it here. A box of ribbons is nearby. Write a word or a name of who or what you have lost on a ribbon and tie it on the heart. With this small act, you can let go of the isolation of your personal experience, honor the way it is tied to the stories of us all, and co-create the shared story of our community. Just as the healing heart holds our experiences of sorrow, it also holds our possibility of joy. Swaying and whispering in the breeze, it holds the rhythm of our past and the rhythm of our future. Touch it. Allow the breeze to touch you. Smell the air, listen to the birds, and perhaps if you come during the school day, hear the sounds of children. Sense that the heart we create together holds the present moment too. The losses of an unimaginable year give rise to the community ritual of our healing heart. Amid the great disruption caused by the pandemic, other losses and celebrations have come too. Even though we haven't been able to share them in person, we have found a way to share our experiences in our Sunday services every week. A ritual changed when we moved worship from in-person to online, but here happening nonetheless. And so in addition to inviting you to come to the grounds to tie a ribbon on the healing heart, I invite you again, as we do every week, to name this week's joys and sorrows. Please write a brief description of whatever important event or remembrance have arisen for you this week in the chat and select Send to Panelists. I will read it aloud later during our caring meditation. In this way, we mark the passage of the weeks from season to season. As the weather changes, as our venue changes, we transform, but also return again to each other. Please join me now in singing the spring verse of Chant for the Seasons.
Winter rains have turned the star wheel, springtime is upon us. Winter rains have turned the star wheel, springtime is upon us. Sharp the smell of loam, bursting in our eyes, the turrets of the tulip. Winter rains have turned the star wheel, springtime is upon us. Greening is the grass, soft upon our brows, the sunlight warm caresses. Winter rains have turned the star wheel, springtime is upon us.
Thank you, Brandon, and thank you to Reverend Mark Bellatini for writing those songs, all the verses to that wonderful song, Chant for the Seasons. Spring, I can't believe it. Finally, I even had to put on my sunglasses driving to work this morning. What is this orange thing in the sky? Oh my gosh, the sun is shining. You know, I don't know about you, but it felt like this pandemic winter was never ending. With its lockdown, shutdowns, isolation, fear, it just seemed to go on forever. Even with the warmer temperature, though, the longer days, and the gradual lifting and easing of restrictions, the drag of disillusionment is still present. Yes, I'm excited about the vaccines. I've gotten my first dose. I'm very excited about that and everyone else being able to get a vaccine. I'm also excited about the prospects of returning to normal, but I'm still weary and tired, and sometimes I have trouble holding focus. Sometimes, because of this, maybe as a result of all this pandemic, I have brain fog, not able to remember or to focus, holding all that we've been through, including those losses. I've read that these are the late stages of, or the stages of late pandemic. So I guess I'm right on schedule with that. In the March 8th edition of The Atlantic, Ellen Cushing quotes Mike Yassa, a neuroscientist at UC Irvine. We're all walking around with some mild cognitive impairment. Based on everything we know about the brain, two of the things that are really good for it are physical activity and novelty. A thing that's very bad for it is chronic and perpetual stress. We've certainly been there. Living through a pandemic, even for those who are doing so in relative comfort, is exposing people to microdoses of unpredictable stress all the time, said Tina Franklin, a neuroscientist at Georgia Tech, whose research has shown that stress changes the brain regions that control executive function, learning, and memory. In 1948, the World Health Organization stated that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. Now, I think that's a wonderful definition of optimal health, and also somewhat perfectionistic. I'm not sure many of us would qualify to be in a complete state of health. To various degrees, pandemic stress has affected everyone. In addition to the normal things of achy, aging, and imperfect bodies, there's a mental and social well-being aspect. I don't know about you, but I felt like I had more energy going into the pandemic, into the early phases, the impact, the heroic, the honeymoon. They were all on a swift uprise, a steep curve. Yes, we're going to rise to this occasion, and yes, we're doing it. But then disillusionment fell hard. And it just seemed to keep nosediving and tumbling right to the bottom. And now we're just beginning the long curve and climb up in the phases that Zunin and Myers pointed out. Did I really slip in that word reconstruction? Wow. Renewal? Amazing. Wow. Can we really put our lives back together? Is it true? I'm so ready. I'm so tired ready. I'm not sure what reconstruction will look like. How will I act in the grocery store? I've gotten used to the routine of ducking through the aisles, avoiding people as if they were objects to avoid at all cost, and sucking air through a mask, And even if someone is looking, they can't see if you smile, frown, yawn, or even drool. This dehumanization is so surreal. It has taken a toll on our mental and social well-being. We've all lost so much individually and collectively. For reconstruction to some form of normal to actually work, we might need some retraining. It has certainly been more than enough time to break old habits and traditions, or at least open space so that we can reimagine them. We might have tumbled somewhat accidentally into the depths of disillusionment, or the whole pandemic actually, but we don't have to be careless about how we return. In social terms, I imagine I'm going to feel like a toddler learning to walk and talk. I'll search for words to make conversation. I'll struggle to put names to faces hidden so long behind masks. I might even overreact to sudden overstimulation. All of this on the road to recovery of well-being. We'll probably do this as a community as well. We'll stumble, fall, get up, and try again. It'll take bravery, patience, and healthy doses of forgiveness and grace. If Zunin and Myers are correct, the arc of the pandemic trauma phases will eventually lead us to an elevated experience of normal. I imagine that this will only happen if we don't just go flip on a light switch of expectations, just flip it on from dark to light and expect things just to happen like magic. I don't think it's going to happen that way. I suggest instead we go to that light switch and we use the dimmer to basically be careful how we re-engage, to take care, to pay attention. We will get there, but it's going to take grace and kindness. Reconstruction is not instant. It's not a transaction. It's adaptive. We would be wise to approach it eagerly and with intention and care. What have we learned about ourselves, about our values during this time away, this time in isolation? Can we bring the best of what we've learned back into our community? Can we bring it with us so we can celebrate life together with the best of those values? Can we be gracious and kind to each other and together as we move and go forward and learn to forgive as we reconstruct and reimagine our future? If the book of Lamentations begins with how lonely sits the city that was so full of people, might our version of reconstruction be, how wise is the congregation that is filled with so much love? I'm looking forward to those days, my friends. But let's do it with intention, with care, with grace, and with kindness. Blessed be and amen.
Thank you so much, Reverend Marian. So where do we go from here? For as much as the virus can spread, as relentlessly as politics can shock us, and as persistent as racism remains, there is another powerful movement, the movement of love, kindness, and human connection. Always at work, a movement we can be a part of every day in small and big ways. Which is why this spring equinox, we invite you starting with our first UU community of every age and stage, and then growing out to anyone, everywhere, to join the Spring for Kindness movement, a movement of courageous love worth spreading. We encourage individuals and the whole family to take part. If you wonder how it will be to re-enter and re-engage in life outside shutdown, why not start with kindness? Mr. Rogers once said that there are 3 ways to ultimate success. The first, be kind. The second, be kind. And the third, be kind. Use your imagination. You can spring for kindness any way you want. 4 days, 4 weeks, 4 times, or 4 times 100. Your choice. Be kind. Do something to pay it forward. Expect nothing in return, except maybe a little joy inside your heart.
As we reflect on how to bless this world with kindness, I invite you to consider how we as a church community come together to prepare each other to do these kindnesses. Our church is a community of love, caring, and generosity. Together, we work for a more just world. To offer our gifts and pay our promised pledges is to say, yes, we are defined by our hearts and our deeper values. Our Share the Plate recipient for March is Community Refugee and Immigrant Services. CRIS is an independent nonprofit organization that serves refugee and immigrant populations in Central Ohio. Their multilingual and cosmopolitan staff team offers a wide range of programs and services designed to facilitate self-sufficiency and successful acclimation for the people they serve. Regardless of your ability to contribute, we value your presence here. The offering that helps build a better church and a better world will now be gratefully received. Thank you for your generosity.
Le ciel est par-dessus le toit, si bleu, si calme. Un arbre par-dessus le toit baisse sa palme. La cloche dans le ciel qu'on voit doucement tête, un oiseau sur l'arbre qu'on voit chante sa plainte. Mon Dieu, la vie est là, simple et tranquille. Cette paisible rumeur-là vient de la ville. Qu'as-tu fait, ô toi que voilà pleurant sans cesse? Dis, qu'as-tu fait, toi que voilà de ta jeunesse? Le ciel est par-dessus le toit, si bleu, si calme.
Thank you, Brandon. Thank you, Nathan. The message I need to hear going into meditation, and that I hope benefits you too, is this. Yes, this is hard. If it feels like you're going through a hard time, then you are going through a hard time. You're not making it up. This is real, and it's really hard, and you're not alone. Just as I thought these words yesterday, acknowledging how hard it is right now, I stepped outside and saw my first daffodils. They stood bright against the difficult winter, the jarring sign of hope. This week, the pain of the pandemic was deepened and widened as we learned of the murder of 8 people in Atlanta, 6 of them Asian American women. In a time of increased violence against Asian Americans and age-old violence against women. There is no sense to be made of something so awful. It is understandable to feel fear alongside grief, to feel anger at misogyny, white supremacy, and xenophobia. We send our love and care to our family and friends and those beyond our circles who are most impacted by hate. We counter the hate in our hearts with kindness to ourselves, starting with ourselves. The way that life is hard right now is reflected too in the sorrows of our community. This week, we are sending a caring card to Nathan G. and his family. He asked for us to hold him in our hearts during a difficult time. Nathan is dealing with weeks of tremendous pain with no clear medical explanation. And these are the sorrows you brought forward in the chat. Nikki H. writes, Yoshi, my 20-year-old cat, died after living with heart disease for more than 4 years. Karen D. shares a sorrow. She writes, my brother-in-law, Bob Berlin, died yesterday in Chicago after a long-term illness. Robin L. writes, our college mentor, equestrian team coach, and friend at First UU lost his youngest daughter this week. We pray for peace for Joe and comfort for his 3-year-old granddaughter. Paul L. and Sylvia H. write in loving memory of our friend and colleague, Reverend Dr. Liz Strong, who left this world yesterday. She had suffered from a debilitating stroke this past week. We mourn a faithful religious educator, universalist historian, and minister. Mom S. grieves the loss of a college friend who died from COVID after 10 days on a ventilator. He was 60. The vaccines came too late for him. Holding all these losses, we join in grief. Hold everybody. Jeannie R. writes, I acknowledge the year is hard, but I try and hang on to hope. Yes. This morning we have joys as well. Sebastian writes, it is my cousin Evelyn's 3rd birthday today. Cooper and Zia B are joyful that this week is their spring break from school. Sue F writes, my joy is yesterday 4 friends came over and we sat around the fire pit, ate, drank wine, and gloried in being together. Stewart and Linda S. write, happy to say our son Martin has successfully completed treatment for thyroid cancer. And Janet M. is celebrating retirement on April 2nd. We move through time witnessing beauty and witnessing pain. Serenity comes and goes like a thread being sewn through fabric. The thread is there even when it's invisible, and we track it with our hope. I didn't know I was hoping for daffodils yesterday, but when I saw them, I was relieved. No, thank you, Marian. We are waiting for so much more, but we can pause and receive the gift of simple joys. So let us pause together now, threading our lives through the woven fabric of this moment, connected to our past, our future, and to each other. Reverend Marian, you are muted.
Yes, I invite you now to listen to our temple bell as we go into a space of silent meditation, of prayer, of reflection. I invite you to sing together. This morning, we've traced the pandemic year, this year we've all experienced. We've journeyed from lamentation to hope. Along the way, we've invited you to share your losses and griefs by tying a ribbon to the healing heart on the church grounds. Please come anytime. We have ribbons here, or you can bring your own. We've also invited you to re-engage, to reimagine, to enter this phase of reconstruction with kindness. Our closing words this morning by Reverend Marta Valentine also echo our journey. She writes, "It has been said that in every death, we lose a little of who we are. A relationship with ourself is severed and bereft. We are left to rediscover, to reimagine, and then reselect who we choose to be." May it be so. I invite you now to join with us as I extinguish the chalice flame. If you have your candle or chalice nearby, I invite you to bring it close so that we can say our words together and then extinguish the flame. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of vision. As we go forth, let us heal and transform ourselves through reason and love. Sometimes it takes more than once to extinguish the flame. This pandemic has been hard, and sometimes we will, yes, have to try, fail, and try again as we come out to some version of new normal. My friends, our chalice flame is extinguished, but not our love.
We have a lot of really great activities, classes, and groups that are currently meeting. So be sure to check out Friday news each week to learn more about how to connect. We are still offering our spiritual practices class, and our UU History 101 class will be starting in April. So be sure to register to get the Zoom information. And our next Conversations on Race book will be Cast by Isabel Wilkerson. These conversations will also start in April. And for all of our members and friends, I want to remind you of two important tasks that we are hoping that you can help us with. First, please fill out the Congregational Survey that was emailed out last week to help us in our strategic plan and our vision for the future of First UU. And please don't forget to fill out the member update form to help us make sure our directory is as up to date as possible. And as always, everyone is invited to coffee hour and a brief town hall on our reopening plans after this service. After the town hall, there will also be a coffee hour and an option to go to a meditation breakout Zoom. We will see you there in a few minutes. And you can see the artwork on this screen is from one of our youth, and I invite you to watch for the hidden message. Please join me now in singing our closing song, Rising Green.
the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new. Our dreaming shows us the way. Wondrous our faith settles deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
Today's worship service would not be possible without the time and care of many people. Please join me in thanking our tech volunteers, talented musicians, and our hardworking staff team for all they do to enrich our community every day of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Your music is always so wonderful. This morning, as we head into coffee hour, which will feature a town hall at the beginning, then options for general conversation or meditation breakout room, I leave you with this question to ponder. What or how did the pandemic reinforce your values, and how will you bring that wisdom back with you into our church community? My friends, have a wonderful week. Blessings to you all. Go now in peace. See you at coffee hour.